Welcome to Easy Style with Sammy. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern. Each episode, I invite a friend, family member, colleague, or just someone I've met on this journey called life to come and share their personal style and approach to business, parenting, life, and everything in between. You'll hear motivational and inspirational stories that will help you refine and build your own personal style. Remember, style is easy when it comes from within. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Easy Style with Sammy. My guest today is Rebecca Undem. Rebecca, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, Sammy. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and we met recently through the wonderful Patrick Kirby, who was also on this podcast a few weeks ago, and just connected, I think, pretty quickly, just have... Well, I guess we've known each other more than a couple of weeks, but we reconnected again a couple of weeks ago. But I just love your energy and your approach to things. And so I'm so excited to have you here to share your story.
I'm excited. I am excited to talk about this. This is a near and dear to my heart topic, Sammy.
Yeah. Yep. Very much so. Well, before we kind of jump into that, Rebecca, why don't you share a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, so this is a long arc. I'll try to make it as short as possible. So I'm what the folks like to call a boomerang. I grew up in this community. I'm in a town in southeast North Dakota. It's called Oaks, and 1,800 people live here. I graduated. I was born and raised here. Graduated from high school here. I was gone about a decade before I returned. And now I've been back longer than I was away, which is an interesting thing. And really, the entire time I've been back here, while simultaneously raising my small young family, we have 3 children, the youngest of which is now going to be 9 in September. So that arc, the first handful of years back here, all I did was try to survive. That's what early motherhood just kind of feels like, I think. Other people wear it far better than I did. That's fine. There's no judgment. It's just what it is, right? It was very, very hard, but I really struggled to how do I find a way for me and my achievement orientation to fit here. And so for me, it was never really about feeling like I was too big for this town, but just really feeling like I didn't belong, right? And I didn't know. And again, it's partly my children just having that kind of overwhelming nature of that. My husband farms with my father. We could have a whole podcast about that alone. Just navigating all of these things, right? And it was in 2019 that I founded a nonprofit organization called Growing Small Towns. When we returned back here, I was just getting into the organizational development field. And so in 2019, I started this nonprofit because I was having these rich and intense and amazing culture-based conversations in C-suites. Okay. So with the executive teams of my corporate clients, and I was thinking to myself, how do I take what I'm hearing in a C-suite and bring it to a main street where there's people that need this just as much as anything, right? But they're never going to pay for it. At least not the prices that it commands. And so a nonprofit seemed like a really smart avenue to achieve that. And then along with that, at that same time, it was the renovation of the building that I'm actually sitting in, 8,000 square feet right in the heart of Main Street. And that was, an enormous transformative process in and of itself. So, to be just a few years under my belt with this organization, this discussion of not playing small in a small town has never been more real and more present and more just right in my face. I'm confronted with it every single day. So that gives a bit of an idea. Basically, Growing Small Towns, there's 3 big pillars of programming. Personal development is one of them. I just think what better way to invest in an asset in a community than in the people that already call it home. That skill set, you get better at communication, you get better at conflict management, you get better at any one particular skill, and that skill set goes with you. And in a small town, if you're the type of person wired for that anyway, you're probably the kind of person involved in lots of stuff. And we need those people that are involved in lots of stuff to continue to be buoyed. I think that's a really important thing for small towns. And then business development, right? If we're helping small businesses start or scale, that's really critical for small towns. And then we have a focus on art and culture as a means of growth for small communities. So our programming is entirely people focused. because I really do believe that people are the way out of every problem that we have. So that's as quick as I can make that. There's a lot to unpack there,
great.
but that's where we're at after, a handful of years of being open. We opened our doors to our facility in July of 2021, just for frame of reference.
Yeah. So new. I think like small town people, and I don't want to like pick on anybody, but I feel like there's a couple different types of personalities, right? Like there's the people like you that grow up, leave, and come back. There's the people that are like, I'm getting the heck out of here and I'm never coming back. And there's the people that are like, I'm never gonna leave. This is just where I'm at. Right. And so like, how do you kind of, because it can be super frustrating to be in your situation, coming in and knowing what you know, what you've experienced, really wanting to help like make things a little bit better, not better, but, help people grow and scale and live into what it is that their potential. Like, how did you start to navigate that and have those conversations with folks? And like, what kind of challenges did you butt up against?
Well, okay. So let's just circle back for 1 second to those kind of three types of people. Here's where I feel like it's instructive. Here's where I feel like it's maybe destructive, like to label us in this way. So what's interesting about it is that I think we're really just talking about our affinity for open-mindedness and maybe open-heartedness. Those are the two things that I put together, right? It's not just having an open mind, it's actually having an open heart.
Yeah.
And so that's actually, by the way, when I think about how do I explain the work we're trying to do, it's literally to crack them both open just even a tiny bit, right? And so the challenge there is really not whether you left, whether you came back, whether you stayed and didn't ever leave. It really is just where we bump up against this, I think, is because we're insular. In the nature, like if we don't ever leave the four walls of our community, we really don't know what we don't know. Yeah. So it's not as if I truly believe like there are obviously some people that are more wired for change, more wired for kind of progressive, creative, innovative trains of thought. There's also just the circumstances in which we choose to operate. I still leave my community quite regularly. I'm constantly exposed to new things. Mm-hmm. So I, of course, want to say, well, what if we did that? And then I try to bring it back here. And I met the resistance, the challenges that I met with are often from the people that have never seen that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we, and it's frustrating, and yet like it makes perfect sense. I mean, how would somebody envision something that they've actually never experienced? Like we need to, so I'll tell you, you asked me how I navigated it horribly at first. I mean, it was very much like, but I went places and I learned things. Like, what's the matter, everybody? Right. And so part of it too is like really getting a better handle on what kind of waters are you actually swimming in? Mm-hmm. And again, like it's so funny that we all, anybody that lives and works in a small town, you caught yourself twice. I heard both of them. And I'm like, oh, it's such a thing for us where we're like, we don't want to disparage anybody. So we have this, like not better, but why can't we say better, Sammy? Right? Like, why can't we just say things could always be better? And that's an outlook. It is a total outlook that I absolutely have. And I also know that many people don't. So,
because that goes back to the change management piece, right? Totally, like we don't need it to be better. Everything is just fine the way that it is.
Yeah. So like the whole, if it's not broke, don't fix it thing is so interesting because I of course ask questions, which that, by the way, would be one of the most important things I think is instead of coming at everything with a sense of judgment, which I absolutely did when I was younger and newer into this work. I was frustrated all the time. Like all the time. And I was, judging it. Like you're so close-minded and you're so not open to change and you're so resistant and you're so whatever. You're the naysayers. You're the cave people, like citizens against virtually everything. That's like a community development phrase. And so it's what I've grown to learn just through the hard knocks of doing it, frankly, is that when we stand in judgment of the people we're faced with like that, we are just as bad as the people that are, you know what I'm saying? It's like we are othering other humans just like they may other us. And so it's not productive, right? So the flip side of that is like, instead of assuming, or instead of immediately labeling people's behavior in whatever fashion feels good to you, simply asking questions, like asking more questions, trying to understand what their hesitations are. What don't you see? The whole, like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Who decides if something's broken? How are we determining as a group, like, depending on the scale and scope of your thing, right? Who's deciding if it's okay the way it is? Because, growth for the sake of growth isn't probably smart either. And yet I will always come at it from that standpoint of like, yeah, but it could always be better. It could always be improved. And I just want to say, especially for rural and small places, by deciding that something can be better, it doesn't mean you don't love it. Mm-hmm. And I think, I've been confronted with that, like, publicly, where people think because I struggled to find my way back here, that Oaks wasn't good enough for me. And then that's what people took away from it. And I said, no, because I want this community to be better, it actually shows how much I love it, because we don't invest in things that we don't love, Sammy.
Of course.
If I didn't give a rip about this town, I wouldn't care. Yeah. Apathy is the opposite of love. And so it's, some of it too is just trying to reframe the approach to growth or the approach to change, right? Helping people see that when we care so much about something that we want the absolute best for it, that's what real love looks like. And again, that's a perspective, and it's not shared by everybody, but it's absolutely critical that I have a way and a means to bring that forward, or I won't make it here.
Right. Well, and I think there's a few things that just kind of bring it all full circle too. And like, this is just a great lesson in communication in general. Like, even if you're not doing community building or anything of that nature, even if you're just on a nonprofit board or like, talking with your spouse, like whatever, when we come in with an idea, we see the big picture, we know what it can be. But you said, other people haven't experienced it. They don't see how amazing it can be. So I love the hitting on, ask a ton of questions and then really listen. But then also we have to listen and trust then what the people are giving us, and use that to kind of then show them, well, this is how this can help with the motivation and the needs and the beliefs that you have, as opposed to making it about us, right? So totally. I think that's such a smart approach in allowing people to see how it's going to personally affect them, as opposed to just, I have this great idea, I'm going to do something really awesome, I know everything. Like, I can see how that can be more jarring to people, or more like, I don't know, like, this isn't my thing.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing too, in this kind of broader conversation, I think if you have a big idea about something that you want to have done, it's really critical to like take a beat and think about, who do I need to tell about this idea right now? Mm-hmm. Like, in its infancy, we can't run around telling everybody about it and expecting that that's going to go well for us, right? Because there's a good part of the population that leads with constraints in their brains. Like as soon as they hear something, they go, yeah, but what about this? Mm-hmm, and you get enough of those early on. I wrote a blog post about this once, just like, maybe we're not getting burnt out, but we're getting snuffed out. Like, you start and this is like a little flicker of a flame. And if you run around telling everybody, it takes like only one person with a wet blanket to completely extinguish that thing, right? And then you have to start and you have to reignite it within yourself again before you go out to the world. And so you just really need to think about it. I think sometimes a couple filters for me have just been like, who do I really need to help see this thing and like get behind this thing? It isn't everybody. Because some of the best things that get created in a community, there's not consensus for that. And if you think, I think if any of us think that we're going to somehow achieve consensus with like excellent communication skills, you are fooling yourself. Like, that's not possible. I don't even think a shared vision for a community is possible outside of, we want everybody to love their life here. Like, that's something I think everybody could get behind, right? But like, what that looks like, how we achieve that, we're not gonna get there. right? So I think that's another big piece of it, is just when you're earlier on in your process is being strategic about who gets to hear those ideas. I wasn't strategic about it. I was constantly relighting my fire. It was, and I learned these things just the hardest way possible, just by doing it, screwing up, trying to figure it out, Mm-hmm. And then when you have a good interaction, asking yourself, okay, well, why was this one different? What happened here that didn't happen before? And then trying to figure out that what's the replicable stuff?
Yeah.
Right. And it's just lessons, but it's really hard work. But I think, when you have a really good idea and you love it, you think everyone's going to love it. Right. No one will ever love it as much as you love it. That's the other piece. Right. So,
yep.
You don't need everybody.
We tell our clients that all the time. Like, nobody cares about
I know.
your
it's
project as much as you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your team doesn't. Nobody's going to champion it as much as you do. And so you have to figure out how to bring people to come alongside you as best as you can.
Yeah. Well, and maintain your own. You have to preserve yourself.
Yeah.
In that process, right? And opening yourself up early on to just everybody. I've used the analogy of standing in the public square. Mm-hmm. There's a time and a place where that's what you'll do, but it's not at the beginning of an idea, right? It's just there's too much fragility. And it is really exhausting. You know what I mean? You hear, again, every single one of us is going to hear way more no's than we ever hear yeses in our entire life if we're asking anything at all. If we're out actually asking, you're actually going to hear no way more. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's being strategic about, and also, you guys talk about this with nonprofit fundraising even. What are you asking of them? Are you asking for feedback? If you're not, then so again, it's just all of those things. Think about what are you actually trying to achieve by sharing it at that moment, right? Just so many little lessons along the way. But
and when it comes to sharing, also, if you're not rock solid in this is what I want to accomplish, this is my idea, if you haven't really flushed it out, then it can also be really easy to lose your way, right? Because then you go talk to Jane and Jane says, oh, well, you should also do this. And then you talk to Bill and Bill's like, well, that's a terrible, don't do this part of it. Everybody's going to have their own opinion about it. And you
for sure
totally lose your vision and exactly kind of the path that you're trying to go down. I'm hearkening back to my own content, which I apologize. It sounds kind of gross, okay. But I wrote a blog post about holding division, right? So I clearly, if you can hear this in my voice, I'm a big picture, 30,000 foot view, pie in the sky, big time dreamer. Yeah. I mean, I really am. And the other piece of this is knowing that, so like on a Myers-Briggs, for example, you've got intuitives versus sensors. I'm an intuitive. I'm constantly trying to make meaning and draw connections and see patterns, and big picture stuff is where I live. Well, that's fine and well, except for your idea is eventually going to need step-by-step sequential details. So there again, it's just such a clear thing. If you're sharing this big picture to a bunch, to even a person that only the first time they go, well, what about this? And you go, yeah, but don't look way down there. Hey, get up here, come up here. They can't do it, for one. And it just means that maybe you need either some refinement of the dream, or you need to be in a position where you can freely be vulnerable to where you might be exposed, where things aren't super tight, because the most audacious of dreams probably don't have a step-by-step strategic plan that accompanies them at the beginning. Right. So I think that's an internal thing. We all have to ask ourselves, what do I really need at this moment? Do I need, dream and vision casting, refinement? Do I need input on this thing? Do I need money? Do I need champions? Do I need cheerleading? Do I need what is it? Right. And then you can get a little more clear about what exactly it is that you're asking for. When I was first starting Growing Small Talents, again, we're a nonprofit. I literally I was working on stuff with a physical building. And so I told myself the thing I can track every single day is how many people I share this thing with. Mm.
And I'm going to start with people that seem to make a lot of sense. Right. And, and then we'll just see what happens. I'll pay attention, kind of have that little bit of a debrief after each conversation and ask myself those questions like what went well, what didn't go well, what might be the reasons for that? Did I show up differently? Am I well rested? Like all of those things that affect us. But then it was like, no, not interested. Or like, oh, good for you. Like proverbial pat on the head and then they move on, right? But the first big yes that I got, the first big partner that I got, I mean, I can't express how much it'll buoy you like through what's to come. And then to me, the key question that you get, like when you get off of either a call or a visit like that, where you feel like you've made a new like soul partner in the process of what you're building, is just to say, who else is like you that I need to talk to? Yeah. And that was 100% how just like the momentum of partnership building, coalition building, if you will, grew for me. And again, like not trying to hold grace, like have grace for the people that don't get your stuff. So you may ask me this later and it's fine. I'm going to tell you right now, the mantra that I ended up just like adopting and I've carried all the way through this process is that I work with the willing and I love the rest. Like I'm not going to drag people across any milestone. I'm not dragging people along this whole race. Like there's no way I can do that. Right. So the people that are willing, the people that are open, the people that share my vision for what we want to see happen in this place and in this community. And then as it expands out to other communities, I'll find them. I'll find them as long as I keep asking and I keep sharing and I keep inviting those people to the conversation. And if you don't get it, I'm going to love you right where you're at. And
I think that's fantastic though, because as things evolve and grow, like in a smaller community, there's less people to kind of hit up for some of these bigger projects or these bigger dreams or these bigger goals. Sure. So what I love about that mantra is that you might have a bunch of no's at the beginning because for a variety of reasons. Maybe it was poor timing. Maybe they're just really busy in that moment. Maybe they don't see the vision. They don't understand how it's going to work. But that doesn't mean they don't like it. And so at some point, because you have that feeling of I'm going to love you where you're at, it makes it so much easier to come back to them and just be like, hey, I just wanted to update you on where we're at and give you a status report or share with you kind of what we've done. Because you never know when that no can transition into something different.
For sure. That's so true. And I think the other piece of it is like, so I built this building. I mean, I couldn't hide what was happening during this time. I mean, it's right on Main Street. Yeah. It was a significant renovation. People really struggled to understand what I was doing. And that's, again, like initially I was like, this isn't that weird. This happens everywhere. Like, what are you talking about? But I got better at just really, if you really try to empathetically put yourself in the shoes of the person you're talking to, and they legitimately have never heard of co-working, for example. The pandemic accelerated that learning curve for everybody, which, I guess there have to be some valuable things that came out of that experience. Otherwise, it's just 2 years of darkness, basically, right? So that was a thing. But once I was open and people would come into the space, it was like then they were experiencing it. I wasn't just talking about something anymore. It was like a physical thing. And I can't tell you the number of people, honestly, that have said to me, I really had no idea what you were doing, but I'm so glad you didn't give up. Like, if that's not an amazing thing to hear, but then the truth is, Sammy, it is so lonely when you're in that and you're getting those, like, I don't get you. I don't get it. I don't understand what you're doing. To have that strength of conviction, you have to be really, really well supported by people that you can turn to, because it is so taxing. Mm-hmm. I mean, if financially taxing, it was physically taxing, and it was absolutely mentally and emotionally just taxing. Yeah.
And you have young kids.
And I had young kids at the time and, still have young kids. I mean, they're older than they were, but they're still kind of needy. I don't know. They just keep needing me, whatever. It's fine.
I am listening to Seth Godin's book, The Dip, right now. Have you listened to that one?
I haven't.
I'm a huge Seth Godin fan, but it is exactly. It's a short read. I definitely recommend anybody check it out. But it's literally about the people, like in order to be the best in the world, whatever your world is, Oaks right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to make it through the dip. The dip is where most people give up, where they say
Yep.
that's like where you hit kind of the bottom. And if you can make it through that dip, then that's kind of the people that are successful. And so how to understand when to quit. Do you quit because the idea is bad at the beginning? But if you make it all the way to the dip and you quit, that's when you've wasted all of your time, effort, and energy. So it's really interesting. Like a lot of the things that you're saying are just kind of resonating with that. So I would definitely check that out too. But I agree with you because entrepreneurship, starting your own thing, it is lonely. You're by yourself and it's extremely pressure filled. What do you think it is about your personality or the personality of like some of these businesses that you've worked with that continue to thrive in these kinds of situations and move forward? Like, is there something that you think you did a little bit differently than maybe what some of these other businesses that are kind of just staying flat or,
I think that my strength of conviction is something that probably sets me apart. And not in a way that I'm like special. I truly didn't waver in what I believed we could build. And I think another piece of that was, and again, I didn't realize this until I was in it and like building it, but I was building what I needed. This building and this organization, it's not for me, but it's what I needed. Yeah. And so I think I was extremely tethered, extremely invested in making this thing happen. And so I think what's cool about it is that I got to a point, Sammy, where I was like, well, and I'll just tell you, it's a good takeaway. So I had one of my early on partners, he and I were on the phone and I was having a particularly crappy day and probably week. And I said, I just feel like nobody gets it. Like, I just feel like I am up against everybody this week is like, terrible idea. That's dumb. And then again, like things happened during this process that were way harder than that. Like some of the things people said to me, because again, this is where I'm not sure people get how hard small towns can be for this reason. Like you said, there's less people. Therefore, if you do anything where you stand a little apart from kind of the way that we're all headed, everybody can see you. There's not enough people to distract anybody from, right? So and you have to know that. And it's like, I knew that. I had no idea how it was going to feel until I was in it, right? So there were people that were really critical of me publicly. They said things to me. It was so hard. So this was probably all the crap that had been happening when I was talking to Bernie, my partner. And he said, you know what, Rebecca? He said, I want you to remember that right now you're actively trying to find people that want to get on the boat with you, right? Like, and grab an oar and help you row it in this direction. And he said, all these people are in the water or standing on the sidelines and you're just beckoning them all, right? You're just calling to all of them like, hey, this is what we're doing on this boat. Like, and this is where we're headed. Do you want to join us? And he said, so many people are just going to like stay there. They're just going to stay there and be like, no, we're good. He said, but the cool thing is our momentum, meaning his and mine, even at that time, because he's on the boat, he's got an oar. He said, we're creating a current. We're creating a current that's moving this in a direction. And all the people that are just hanging out in the water, they're going to get swept up in it anyway.
I love that.
And I did too. I was like, oh, and he goes, it doesn't matter. He's like, it doesn't matter if they get it right now, if they never get it, you're creating a current of change that's happening and everyone's going to be impacted by it. And so that was, again, I think I was really well supported. Just my emotional and like that support network of people that I had was tight and strong. Very few of them lived here, which was, again, like, I think that I I put myself in the way of development opportunities along the way that kept me connected to a broader world.
Yeah.
I think that's something that maybe sets me apart. Because I think my myopic point of view is dangerous for anybody, right? Echo chambers are dangerous. Yep. Myopia it's dangerous. And so again, for me, so I intentionally curated a network of people around me, and it's not like they all became supporters, but they all held me when I needed to be held. And so I think that's maybe a couple of the things that set me apart. I'm also just extremely wired for development and growth. Like I know that I can't read my way into success. That's what I know. I know that I can't do that. I can't, I barely read personal development books anymore. Like I used to read them. And now, how I activate growth in my life is twofold. One, I do something. As in I actively seek out, like I go, oh, that feels a little uncomfortable. Probably an indicator I should like take a stab at it. And then I debrief with my therapist.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not kidding. Like,
no, I love that.
It's like, so people ask me these questions. I'm like, well, nothing lands lightly on my brain, Sammy. I experience the world and I immediately do this. What's the meaning? What's the connections? What's the stuff? And I can't do that all by myself. So I have a fantastic therapist, and she's just like so on the Rebecca self journey with me. Like she just loves it. She loves that this is how I'm wired, So that's what growth looks like to me. It's a combination of trying stuff and then debriefing it,
Yeah.
And honesty, self-honesty is just a huge part of this too.
I think that is critical. And I think that's a great spot to kind of transition into the last 5 questions that I always ask every guest, even though you've kind of sort of somewhat answered some of them, but that's okay. We're going to do it again anyway. Because I love your message, and just that, like, even like I said earlier, even if you're not in community development, even if you're not doing like a huge project or whatever, like I think anytime you're just wanting to do something that's a little bit maybe outside the norm of either your community, or maybe even challenging yourself outside the norm of what you normally would do, and you're trying to even just get your family to come on board with you. I think you gave some great insights and tips that can kind of help us kind of push through that mindset and just keep doing the things that we want to do so that we can live our best lives. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so, for sure. For sure.
I appreciate all of that. Okay. So you said you don't really do you kind of already answered this question, but where do you go for personal development or growth?
The streets.
Your therapy. Yep.
The streets. And then I back that up with therapy. I go out and do things, and then I go to my therapist and we talk about it. That's what I do.
And when you're out in the streets, the tough and rough and tumble streets of Oaks, North Dakota, do you ask people for like their brutal honesty? Like, do you frame questions in the way that people are like really honest with you, or like, how do you kind of get the right answer? Not the right answers, but get people to actually answer. Yeah,
the truth. So let me tell you, Sammy, how I do that here. I built and renovated an 8,000 square foot building that literally is the place where if you want to talk about it, you can come in these doors. Like I have infused this space with that energy. And I repeat it to people when they come in here. So if people are in this space and they do that like weird filtery, like where they go like, oh, I mean, and then I stop them immediately and I say, you don't have to do that in here. Because that's what I wanted this to be. And I joke, I'm like, apparently I needed 8,000 square feet for me to feel safe to do that. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But for real, psychological safety is often what's missing. People don't feel safe to explore their ideas. And so I created a space, and anybody can do that, Sammy. It doesn't have to be a physical building. You can be that safe space for people if this is the kind of way that if you're wired to want that. Yeah. So then again, I watch, I pay attention, and I immediately like call them out and say, you don't have to do that in here. You can do that out there, but in here, you can say what you think, you can speak freely, and we can explore things in here, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that goes back to your initial thing that you said, I'm going to not say it exactly the same way, but that we need to open up our minds and our hearts like that. that combination seems like is just what you live and breathe on a daily basis.
It is. It's what I want to cultivate in my community more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Okay, would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an extrovert,
Yeah.
like all the way, And again, like for my my extroverted friends and for my introverted friends that are going to listen to this too, it doesn't mean that I don't ever need downtime, because 100% I do. But where I actually like my battery gets recharged through other humans.
Yep.
100%. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense that you're in the line of work that you're in.
Yeah. It would be I don't know if an introvert would be very well suited to this, the way that I'm doing it, especially.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? We all have our role to play. But yeah,
deal.
Definitely extroverted.
What's something that's on your goal list for this year that you want to accomplish?
So when I read this question, I was like, So I may seem like I'm super goal oriented, right? Like I decide I want something and then I go after it. But right now, because I'm not taking on new projects, like I'm just kind of trying to balance everything. My overarching goal is to continue to nurture myself as we go. And make sure that I continue to explore, be honest, be vulnerable with me. Yeah. So I think if there were a way to put that into a goal, it's to continue my loving relationship with not just myself, but my therapist. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, because again, there's going to be no shortage of challenges here. Like, there's just not, I'm going to constantly be dealt with things that without a good safety net of just support and kind of self-reflection and all the things that come along with therapy for me, it would be dangerous for me. So it's to not lose myself, right? Not only to not lose myself, but to continue to pursue the finding and discovery of myself too. Yeah.
Well, it's hard to be brutally honest with yourself if you don't have a support team helping you do that, whether it's a partner, a therapist, a best friend, whatever. You got to have somebody in your life that can be brutally honest and help you kind of look at things from a different perspective.
Right.
So true.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is a piece of advice you've gotten from someone that has stuck with you?
So work with the willing and love the rest. I heard that. And honestly, I can't remember who said that. But right when I needed it, it flowed back into my brain. And now it's literally, when I say it's a mantra, like I tell myself that, I tell other people that, like, because you're not going to win them all over.
Yeah.
And you'll be sad and lonely if you think you should or can.
Yeah. Well, and this is like a weird example, but it's almost like, when we talk with clients all the time about their email list and unsubscribers, and it's like, who cares? Let them go, because they're not your people.
Release them with love, right?
Yeah.
And again, like you said, you don't know when those, because again, I think that's the other thing. Okay. So I have a backup piece of advice. And this is actually from the 4 Agreements. So, which is a really great book that helps frame out 4 really simple ways to just show up and live a pretty solid life. It's to not take anything personally. Mm-hmm. I'm very attached to my ideas. I'm very attached to how great I think things are going to be when I'm like, this is going to be awesome, right? But then to really just recognize that, like, when somebody unsubscribes from your email list, it has nothing to do with you. It's because of the stuff that they are dealing with, living in, and that's not about us. So also partner conversations, fundraising asks, like all of that stuff. If you can just go, oh my gosh, this isn't about me. Holy, does that just like shift? My therapist, by the way, I often share I told her, I said, do you realize that you come up in like every conversation I have publicly, and I share her advice? She laughs. She loves it. She's like, that's great. I said, not everybody can pay for therapy. I would like people to benefit from my investment in myself. So we talk about sides of the street. Like, so it's keeping your side of the street clean. Recognizing that, like, you're really only in control of your side of the street. And so when you can do that, you keep a little bit of this distance or separation that makes it a little easier to accept crappy behavior, poor responses, what have you, the big no's, rejection, whatever it is. If you just go, gosh, like, this isn't about me, because our self-worth isn't something that's negotiated by other people. No. And it feels like it, but that doesn't make it true. So yeah,
That's
that would be
hard,
it's a really hard thing to get good at, especially if you're a people pleaser.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then you just think like, well, if people don't like it, then something's wrong with me. But that's a story that we're telling ourselves. And,
100%.
So that would be my second big thing. I've worked on it. I wouldn't say that I haven't nailed it, Sammy. I'm still working on that actively every day.
Well, and that's one of those things that like, even when you're rock solid for a bit, something creeps in at some point and,
Yep. Some unhealed, unhealed something that you haven't addressed. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy how, and I'll just say it because it fits here. My therapist also always says, well, it's because it's tricky down here, Rebecca. Like us on planet Earth, like it's super tricky. And I love that so much because it keeps it light, but it absolutely addresses the fact that humans are messy.
Validates.
Humans are messy and chaotic, and it's hard, but.
Yep. Okay. So last question. What would you say is a non-negotiable in your life?
Having fun, like laughing. Humor is it's the balm to my soul. It soothes me every time I'm struggling. And so
your kids think you're funny? Because my kids don't think I'm funny. I tell jokes all the time and they're just like, Mom.
So I have 2 boys. I have 2 boys and a little girl. My little girl she practically thinks I walk on water right now, which is such a fun little age. I make her belly laugh regularly. My older son is kind of stoic, so he is harder to make laugh. My middle son too, like he laughs pretty hard. So yeah, they think I'm okay funny, but I find them delightful. Yeah. I think that's something too, is that I know how much humor and having fun, like laughing, how much it makes me feel better. And so I truly do, again, cultivate that in my life. Mm-hmm. I look for, that's confirmation bias. Again, it's like something so like if I believe that there's always something to laugh about, I will always find something to laugh about. Yeah. And that helps me a ton, right? Because it makes it sound like I don't ever struggle. At the end of this, people might be like, well, God, she like never struggles. I super struggle. I struggle all the time. And I think all of us do. I really do. I don't think that makes me special. I just have really tried to work hard to figure out, okay, when I'm feeling like this, what do I really need? What's helpful and not destructive, constructive and not destructive? Mm-hmm. Because gosh, there's any variety of options of things that would maybe Band-Aid it, Band-Aid the pain, but it's not actually constructive. It's not actually restorative.
Yeah. It's a great reframe.
Yeah. So humor is absolute non-negotiable. If I'm not laughing, then I need to call it Patrick, to be honest. Like he's a person that every single time we talk, like I walk away feeling better about life. I think he's one of those like key people in my life. Right. And that's just your listeners. They'll have to go back and listen to him.
You have to go back and listen to him. Yeah. Well, cause he talks about his struggles too, as an entrepreneur and a stay-at-home, or not stay-at-home dad, but like, the primary,
a very involved dad.
Yep. During the day with, yes, he's definitely one, depending on the amount of coffee he's had, will let you know how much laughter will be coming out.
Yeah. And usually it's a pretty solid baseline. The caffeine, it's not as if there's ever a day where he's like not caffeinated. So
correct.
Same. So it's good.
I love it. Well, Rebecca, this has been fantastic. If people want to connect with you, learn more about your organization, or just lurk in all of your places, where can they do that?
Lurk at all of my places. I love it. Sorry. No, it's great.
That came out and I was like,
please come and creep on all of my places. Okay. So growingsmalltowns.org is the best place to find out about kind of the nonprofit and the co-working space and what we're rolling with here in Oaks. I'm a speaker. I'm a consultant. So that's just my name, my first name, last name.com. So RebeccaUndem.com. And you'll find me in all of those places on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook as well. So yeah, I mean, if people want to reach out and connect, I'm always game for making new friends. Big shock, huh? Yeah. I like people a lot. I like people a lot. So yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah. And we will link up all of the stuff that Rebecca shared, all of the links, everything in the show notes at easystylewithsammy.com/23. Rebecca, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sammy.
Well, if that didn't motivate you to get out there and go after that thing that's big for you, whatever it is, a big project, a change in your life, something that you have been wanting to tackle but just haven't yet. I know Rebecca has inspired you to do something big or small, make a little change, do something to help get you to that thriving place where you're having all of the things that you want in your life because you deserve it. I want to thank Rebecca again so much for being a guest today and sharing all of her wisdom and insights. Again, everything will be linked up in the show notes at easystylewithsammy.com/23. For now, make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to these episodes so you don't miss them. They come out on Thursdays, and we have the video versions available for you on YouTube as well. Just search at Easy Style with Sammy. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you, and I really hope you have a fantastic week. We'll talk to you soon.